Today, Italian Americans make up the fifth largest ancestral group in the United States. Italian culture has molded America with our obsession with art, fashion, and food. But most of all, Italian culture has given new meaning to family, tradition, and loyalty. I should know, I grew up in an Italian family. My grandparents were from the town of Lanciano in the region of Abruzzo, Italy, born in the Italian province of Chieti, bordering the Adriatic Sea. My father is 100% Italian. But this isn't a story about me, immigration, or Italy. This is a story about my grandfather, a man named Pietro Americo, and his love of family and pizza. For some is a cheat meal, for others is a quick bite while you're on the go. Some eat it on special occasions and has become the go-to for many. But for many years, love, tradition, and perseverance, along with pizza, have kept traditions alive, families together, and at one point it was the only thing that gave them hope in the new world. This is a story about pizza, of my family, of my pizza, a story that I will forever be proud of. Could I have packed my bags and leave like they did? Find better opportunities? I don't know. But because they did, today I have memories and a heritage that will forever shape who I am.
Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. I'm your host, Rich Herrera. This is your podcast for all things food and pop culture. Thank you for tuning in. Just a couple of reminders. Just want to make sure you're following me on socials at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content, anywhere you get your social media feeds, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're still calling it Twitter, I think, and TikTok for, at least another month. So we'll kind of see how that goes. And also to follow, make sure you follow and like on your podcast player of choice to make sure when new episodes are coming out. Today's episode, I'm so happy to have Erica D'Arcangelo. Did I get that last name right?
Yeah, that's right.
I meant to ask you that before we got started. I'm sorry. But Erica D'Arcangelo, she is the author of the book, A Story About Pizza, which is an immigrant story about her family coming from Italy to America and using food as a storytelling device to tell that story. So I'm really happy to have her on. I don't normally cover books, so this is going to be interesting. Not that I don't read, but I watch a lot more TV and movies than I do read. So I was very excited to have Erica come on and talk about her book. So Erica, welcome to the pod. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So we love pizza here in America. I mean, I think the average American eats about 23 pounds of it a year, which are rookie numbers, I think.
Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Because I feel like I can
Me
eat 23
too.
pounds in a month, let alone in a year. And so A Story About Pizza isn't some weird connection between a food and your family. Pizza runs deep in your family. So tell me a little bit about that, before we get into you being an author and the idea of this book. Tell me the story of kind of you, your family, and how pizza has a more deeper feeling for you, a deeper meaning for you and your family than, say, the average person.
Absolutely. So, my grandfather was an Italian immigrant and he came over to America and he had nothing. And his whole dream was to open a pizzeria. So he worked very hard in the coal mines. I think he left school when he was like, 14, 15 years old. Worked and worked and worked, saved his money. And then he had this dream of opening this pizzeria. So he and my grandmother, they opened up an Italian market to start with. And it was in this little town called Wimber, which was mostly dominated by the Berwyn White Coal Company. So a lot of immigrants came there and they worked in the coal mines. So what ended up happening is they opened this market and at first they weren't making ends meet. And so my grandmother and grandfather and their friend were talking one day and they thought, okay, well, let's start making pizza. So they start making pizza, people start coming in. This is just like takeout, plain pepperoni. Next thing you know, here we are 65 years later and the pizzeria is still open. And now my dad runs the pizzeria. So it just has been an evolution and has really been like a legacy for our family.
Yeah, it's really amazing reading the book. I thought it was very insightful, and talking about your family and the hardships of immigration and coming here, and I want everybody to have a chance to read this book. So I wanted to mention this before we get too deep into this. I'm going to do a book giveaway. This is my first giveaway on my podcast, so I'm very excited. Um, I- it, if you're listening, stay till the end. I'm going to give you some details on how to enter for this free book, A Story About Pizza. It's it's a short read. It doesn't take a long time to get through, and I thought it was just a really cool book. It really put me into the shoes of your family as they were crossing over on the boat in that first chapter, coming from Europe to America and the hardships of all that happening. Now, being an author was not your first gig, so to speak. So, kind of you have a really interesting story of kind of what you do for your day job and then how that sort of translated into writing this book. Tell me about that.
So yeah, I have a marketing background. I've worked in the marketing industry for 20 years. I own three marketing agencies. And funny enough, we've been based in Tampa, Florida for most of the time I've been open. But my father ended up having heart surgery. So my husband and my daughter and I, we thought, let's go home. And home is Western PA. So we went for a year and my dad was kind of recovering. And I said, hey, why don't we, go into the pizza shop and you can go in and just, get some time away from home. And I thought it would be good for him to get out. And I said, and I can do your marketing. We can ride in together and they're open a couple days a week and this will be good. So my dad, he was really grumpy. He was like, I don't believe in marketing. Well, I said, okay. Well, I said, how about, I said, of course, I said, I'll help you for free. Let's just go and see what happens. So we got there and my dad just like got super inspired. Like he renovated the building that my grandfather bought. And this building was from like 1905. And he started traveling to Italy and he was, expanding the menu. And I just saw like he was creating on it so much and talking to the customers and telling them the story. And then he would tell me all the family stories on the way there and the way back. And then I was filming content and I was looking through pictures and I just became really inspired. I thought this is a really nice, positive story to tell about how you never want to give up on your dreams.
Yeah, so the pizza you were mentioning, the pizza place has been in your family for a long, long time, and it's Diarc's Pizza, right, up in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It was funny when you were mentioning about your dad being kind of the grumpy old guy running the shop that just like this marketing stuff's not going to work. But how did that affect the business? You the website, I googled the pizza place. The website looked great,
Yeah.
and it really made me like. I'm not in PA. I'm actually in Florida. I actually got pizza that night because because of that website. I'm like, God, I really want some pizza now. So
Yeah.
I ended up getting pizza that night. So great job looking at the website. How did business do? Because as I was reading your bio, it seemed that the pizza place wasn't doing great business, and then you stepped in to help with the marketing. So how much has business flourished since then?
I mean, I would say we're probably 4 or 5 times busier than we were when I started about 6 years ago. But the funny part is that I started to take over the social media and started to film the content. And the first year, my dad was like, "Oh, we did double
Oh
the
wow.
previous year." So then he sort of was like, "I believe in marketing now," even to the point where he was like, "Put me as a referral.
Oh
If you
wow.
need a client, make me the referral." And then at that time, TikTok was started to be really popular. So I thought, okay, I'm here for, 3, 4, 5 hours when my dad's working. I'm just going to film a bunch of pizza cutting videos because the sound of the cutter through the pizza and the cheese and the pizza looks so good. And so I would stand in the kitchen for hours and just film pizza cutting video after pizza cutting video. So I was posting, I went to bed one night, I woke up the next day, I had 1 million views.
Oh wow. Wow.
And I was like, okay, I guess this is working. And now we have some videos, like our best video has 64 million views on it right now.
Wow.
So
That's
it went
amazing.
viral. Yeah. So people started coming in. I mean, we have our loyal customers that, their parents, their grandparents, their great grandparents came in and they
Mm.
still come in today. But we also have people that are like, hey, I saw you on TikTok or Instagram, like at Pizza. He supported us because we were a small family owned business and he started collabing. I would post a cutting video and I'd invite him to collab and he'd collab. And it was like so wonderful to have like that type of support for my family's business.
Yeah. And how much more did it mean to you to do that kind of work for your family versus like a faceless, conglomerate organization that, that you don't have that personal connection to? How much better did it make you feel doing that for your family than you seen it blowing up like that?
Sure. I mean, usually for me, like if I want to help a client, I'll take them on. If I don't feel like I really want to or can help, then I don't normally take them on. But in this situation, this was like I was passionate about this. I was really inspired. It really made me so happy because I was very close to my grandparents and I saw how hard they worked.
Hmm.
So I just was very happy also to see my dad excited. Like when I wasn't there, like when I would travel, he would call me on the way home and he would tell me who came in and how busy it was. And just to see that excitement just really made me so happy.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book and kind of the structure of it a little bit. It's a little bit different than chapter and verse of a book, and I didn't realize this as I was reading through it. But at the last page of every chapter, you have a recipe, a family recipe in there, and I thought that was really cool. Like I'm reading the first chapter, and they're talking about this focaccia bread, and you made it sound really good in the book, and then I flipped to the end of the chapter. Like, oh my God, there's a focaccia bread recipe in there. Uh, Obviously that was a deliberate choice, but did the recipes come in after you were telling the story, or did you craft the chapters based on the recipes that you wanted to put in there?
So, funny enough, I wrote the whole book and then I was going back through the book the second time and I was like, I just feel like this needs something else. And then my good friend, he's actually a filmmaker. I was like, can you just like please read this for me? Just tell me what you think. And he said it would be really cool if you put a recipe at the end of each chapter because you're talking about a type of food in every chapter. And I was like, you know what? That's a really good idea because these are all our family recipes. And so I added those after the fact.
I mean, it's a really cool way to pull readers into the story. I thought I didn't make any of the recipes. I'm not that much of a cook, but it's cool that it's in there, right? And they're very easy to understand. These aren't like really hard recipes necessarily, but very easy to understand. And I feel like it pulls a reader into the book. It pulls them into the story of that particular chapter. And when you're eating that focaccia bread, you're put into the position of that character also eating that in that chapter. I thought that was a really nice touch. And I do plan on trying to make some of these recipes at some point in the future. But I thought that was really cool. Did you have any kind of funny stories when you were talking to your family about developing this book and putting the recipes in there, going, okay, I want to put this recipe in here? And if your family recipes are anything like my family recipes, nothing is written down. Everything is just done kind of like by feel, by taste, by smell. And did you have any kind of fun little disagreements? I would say some robust dialogue with your family about, okay, this recipe needs to go in here, and how do you do it? And then you try to make it, and they're like, wait, you're not doing it right. That sort of thing. Was there any kind of like fun dialogue with your family about the inclusion of some of these recipes?
Oh, for sure. So the pasta visual recipe, that's my favorite recipe in the book. So my grandmother used to make pasta visual like every Friday, but she made like a very plain. She used two or three kinds of beans. She used a red sauce. She used the little ditalini noodles. So my dad had taken that recipe and he had almost made it into like a pasta visual minestrone hybrid.
Oh wow.
He took loose hot sausage. My mom is a master gardener. She grows vegetables in the garden. He would take the vegetables and cut up some vegetables, some carrots, some celery, some different stuff. He'd use the beans, of course, the ditalini and the red sauce, but he would almost make it more of a soup. And so that was definitely like, we were like, should we use the original Nicolette D'Arcangelo Friday pasta visual, or should we use the Emery D'Arcangelo, like the enhanced, the 2.0? And I'm like, I want the 2.0 because I like the vegetables and I like to have the hot sausage in there. So we decided to go with that one. We liked it the best.
That's interesting. I just thought that was such a cool feature of the book, and it reminded me of things like Julie and Julia. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of reminded me of those types of narratives where you're experiencing the story through the food that's being cooked in the book. So it really brought me back to that because I really liked that Julie and Julia movie, and I was like, oh man, this is a lot like that, and I thought that was really really neat. Um, did you work in your father's pizzeria growing up as a kid? You did your time there, when you were 15, 16 years old. Do you have any fond memories of working at the pizzeria when you were growing up?
Oh, I worked at the pizzeria since I was like 6 or 7 years old. I mean, here, so we used to fold boxes. There were a ton of grandkids. There's 5 kids in my family. My uncle had 3, my aunt and uncle had another 3. So it was like we had cousins and we would all fold boxes and my grandfather paid us 10 cents a box. And then he used to pass us $2 bills out. He always had $2 bills. And then we would go and we would buy candy and we would set up little tables, we would sell candy. And then when we got older, we started with dishes, cleaning off tables, making pizzas. And then as, we got older and older, it was like cash register, waitress, hostess, run the ovens was like the final job that you had,
Yeah.
after you'd worked there most of your life. But our whole family worked there.
Yeah. Wow. And the one thing about the book, you're telling your story about your grandfather immigrating from Italy to the United States and working in the coal mines and working, um, for the most part, kind of being exploited because of they don't know anybody and they're coming in with nothing and they're so, in a way, easily exploitable. It tells the story of immigration even to this day. When you were doing your research about your grandfather coming from Italy to America, what were some of the things that you learned about the immigration process back then, and kind of the things that your grandfather went through? What were some of the kind of more shocking things you're like, oh wow, my grandfather went through this. This is amazing, or this is crazy. Kind of walk me through some of that.
Sure. So one of the things that was so interesting was that when people came in and they were immigrating, their names got changed a lot. And the names were incorrect because we were going through the naturalization records because my dad just went back to Italy to get his citizenship this past year. So when we did that, it was like almost tricky to find the records because so many of the names were just incorrect names and then going and tracing that back. So that was tricky. The other thing was that with the coal mines, like when my grandfather and his family arrived to Wimber, Pennsylvania, Wimber was split, and it's not split today, but the east end of Wimber is called Little Italy. So
Mm.
all the Italians lived on the east end. On the west end, you had the Polish, the Irish, and the Slovakians. And the people that owned the coal mines didn't want the two groups to talk because you didn't have a union at that time.
Oh yeah.
And so
Wow.
there were so many injustices that they were like, we don't want these people to talk about wages. We don't want them to talk about labor. And many years you had just this small town that was just split down the middle.
Yeah. What so you're saying it's not split now, which is great, but kind of back then, you when immigrants came, obviously they didn't know anybody, so they stuck kind of to their culture and to the people that they understood, and that's how those kind of neighborhoods came about. What was one surprising thing that you learned about your grandfather as you were researching and writing this book?
Probably how hardworking he was. He really was like, got up so early and he worked in the mines with the elements. And like Western PA, you have like a very severe winter there.
Yeah.
And he never complained about it. And then, when I knew my grandfather, he was a lot older. Like he passed away in 1999. So
Mm,
both my grandparents were older.
hmm.
And what I noticed about him, he was very soft spoken. He never complained. He would never say that he went through any kind of a hardship.
Hmm.
But then learning of like what the hardship was and how he saved his money and how hard he worked. And when he bought the building, he would stay up all night. He would check the coal furnace. He'd fix the building. He'd open the shop. During the day when the shop was closed, he would go visit neighbors and help them with stuff.
Yeah. I think one thing we don't understand as native or as native born Americans, myself being included, I was born here in the States, is the resilience among immigrants is
Yeah.
something that I can only hope to have at some point in my life. They are experiencing things that we won't experience as those that are born here in America and have sort of like that privilege of being born in kind of the richest country in the world, right? But the
Yeah.
resilience of immigrants coming in and facing hardships on their journey and coming in here with nothing other than the clothes on their back and the money in their pocket and being able to build businesses. As I was going through my bachelor's degree in organizational leadership, one thing that we found out during our entrepreneurship class is the reason why you see most entrepreneurs being immigrants is because they're used to that resilience that as entrepreneurs you're facing for the first time. Like if I started a business, I'm going to run into things that I've never run into before, and I'm not going to know how to handle those things. Whereas most immigrants coming over to America hit those walls early and quickly and know how to overcome them. And then you see that coming into a business as your family has experienced opening up the pizzeria. So I think your story of your grandfather throughout this book is a story about resilience through pizza, which I think is really cool. Just talking about how, you know, resilient your grandfather was, and then the food that he experienced as he came here trying to find food from Italy here in America, and then making it themselves when they didn't have it. So I thought that was really cool. Now I want to talk a little bit about you as an author, because you said you were in marketing, so you weren't an author by trade, so you didn't have kind of those connections to agents and publishing houses that some established authors have. This is a self-published book. Speaking of resilience, what kind of roadblocks did you run into in self-publishing versus going the traditional writing a manuscript and pitching it out to agents and things like that?
Oh, so many. So, first I finished the book and I didn't know what to do with it. So I just let it sit for 4 months
Mm,
because I was like, what do I do? So then I was like looking around, and there's a lot of companies out there that they help you with self-publishing. So the first one I used, it wasn't such a great experience, but I learned a lot.
yeah.
So the pre-orders, like I thought I was going to be able to do pre-orders, but then they weren't set up the way they needed to be. And then the book was sort of pushed out. And then I was like, oh, like I hadn't done any like pre-promotion of the book. So that was one of the learning experiences. Like, okay, make sure that the company or the person I go with can do pre-orders and that I do enough before the fact. Like I just actually finished a children's book
Oh
that's going
wow.
to be available for pre-order within the next week or so, but it's not coming out until February 9th, which is National Pizza Day.
Oh
So now
nice.
I have 2 months to, promote that book before it comes out.
Mm,
So that was one thing. And then just, I think that with authors that it takes 10 times the work that you think it's going to take.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I was gonna say, like, writing the book is just a sliver
yeah,
of the work that you have to do. It's the promotion, it's the grinding, the maybe a book tours if you do that.
yeah,
Podcasts like mine, coming on and promoting that stuff. That's
yeah,
like 80% of the work versus the 20% you spend writing it. That's the fun part for you, right? Is the
yeah.
writing and the research and getting all that down. Now comes the real like grind of promoting the book and getting sales out. And you said you had a kids book coming out. Is this a version of your book written for kids? Is that right?
Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
called Pietro's Pizza, and it's about a little boy from Italy who loves pizza and all his adventures. And so the first book is a children's version of immigration and the love of pizza. And then there's going to be probably right now I have 12 books total,
Oh wow.
but each one will be like a type of adventure that has a type of a lesson in it for a child that will teach them about Italian culture and food, but also things like resilience and never giving up and getting along with people and just, all the things that it's good for a kid to learn.
Yeah. So this is gonna be like a series, kind of.
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. That's great. And it's
Mhm.
going to be available, I'm sure, on Amazon and your normal booksellers.
Oh yeah, it's going to be available for pre-order. I mean, it should be available within 3 or 4 days on pre-order because we uploaded everything yesterday.
Right.
But February 9th is the day that the books are coming out, or
Right.
at least the first one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as this podcast is published, it's probably going to be after the 3 or 4 days that you talk about. So it's available for order probably right now as you're
Yeah.
listening to this and speaking kind of
Yeah.
in future tense and time
Yes.
traveling podcast, so to speak.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
So, one thing I found interesting about your book is you decided to go with a fictionalized version of your grandfather's story versus a straight up memoir. What
Yeah.
was the thinking kind of behind the fictionalization of it versus just writing a memoir?
Mostly the timeline and the fact that my grandparents, passed away a long time ago. And I didn't want to have, like, if it was going to be a fact, I didn't want to have like historical inaccuracies in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really had to timeline it out. And I did talk to some family members and I interviewed my parents and I collected as much information as I could.
Right.
But I also like to just put some other creative information in there. But there's definitely some stories in there that are true stories.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's true stories in there, and
Yeah.
I still thought it was a very gripping way to tell tell the story, right? I mean, it's still the story of resilience and of pizza and of finding family through food and making something of yourself when you come in here and or when you come to America and you're immigrating. And I still thought it was a really great story, but I thought it was interesting the fictionalized version versus a straight up memoir. So that's excellent, excellent. So, was there, speaking of the kind of the fictionalization of it, was there any piece of the story that you kind of was challenging to recreate? That you heard the facts of your father or your grandfather coming to America, and you're like, oh man, how can I make that a little bit more gripping, so to speak, for the reader? Was there any roadblocks that you hit on that?
The beginning of the book, because, when he was in Italy, it was so long ago. And then also him traveling to America. Because, my dad was telling me, but my dad hadn't been born yet at the time. So we were just sort of like, okay, this is what I think happened. They came in through here just from when we looked at the naturalization record. So we really had to piece that part together. And then, my dad was born, I think it was right around the year that they opened the pizzeria, maybe a year or two before.
Mhm.
So he grew up in the pizzeria. So then from the time they opened the pizzeria on, I had a much more accurate account because, my dad was there.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you were talking about your grandparents had passed away by the time you got around to writing this book. So the research piece of it probably took a little bit of time. You had to kind of nail your dad down and say, okay, I need you to kind of walk me through these stories, right? What kind of research did you do in terms of kind of the socio-political aspect of the book, the immigration piece of it, the part about the exploitation of immigrants coming in and working in the coal mines? What kind of things did you do to research that piece of the book?
Well, we had some people in the family who were older that were still alive or still alive now. And so I got some information from them and I had my dad get some information. And then there's a book called, I think it's called like The Coal Miners of Wimber. So I just did some research into that aspect of really like looking at like historically what was happening during that time.
Yeah, what was some of the hardships that immigrants were going through as they were working in these coal mines? We're talking like obviously long days, things like that. What kind of struggles did they run into working in these coal mines?
I mean, there were kids being taken out of school. That, my grandfather was taken out of school. I think he was in ninth or 10th grade and was put to work in the coal mine. So you have like the child labor section, the just the state of the mines. Like the one of the reasons the mines had closed back then is because so many of the coal miners got black lung. My
Mm,
grandfather had black lung. So you had people who were getting sick and just the precautions of going into a workplace that was, unsafe, where people got sick, where they were paid unfair wages, where they were kind of made to work in conditions that wouldn't necessarily happen today, or at least we hope they wouldn't. That's what was going on then.
wow. So we're
Yeah.
talking about back that you mentioned there was no unions. There's also no child labor laws. I mean, it was kind of a free for all. And reading through some of the hardships in your book about the abusive bosses, that were running these coal mines, and you're like, look, I don't care if you're sick, you're coming to work, and this mine ain't gonna mine itself. And so I thought, again, it just speaks to that resilience of getting through the other side of that and being able to open up a pizzeria and being able to run a family run business on the other side of that. I thought was really cool to read, and just finding that story woven throughout that entire book, I thought was very touching.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Erica, I think the book is wonderful, and being self-published has a lot of challenges. So you don't get the promotional backing of like a publishing house that's doing all the media runs. So I want to give you as much time as you want to promote the book. Where can people find it? Social media, websites. Where can people find you and your family and your pizzeria if you're listening in the Windber, Pennsylvania area, where you can find the pizza. I want to give you this time to just kind of roll out the red carpet and do however much promotion you want to promote for your book.
Thank you so much. So I try to keep this as simple as possible just because I do have the marketing background. So a story about pizza, if that's all the handles for all the social media. And also, if you go to the website or you just Google search a story about pizza, you'll get the results from Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And, if you look on Apple Books, but the book is available in all those places. The pizza place is called DR's Pizza. It's DARC''S. But if you look on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, it looks like Stark's Pizza, DARCS Pizza. And that's pretty much, and that's the website. So I tried to keep just everything kind of the same so it would be easy to find.
Good, good. And I'd be remiss to not ask this. Besides your family's pizza, what is your favorite pizza from, any place, or favorite type of pizza if we don't want to name a place? What kind of pizza do you like?
Well, funny enough, I just wrote an article with my top 10. So my whole family, we have a group text and we talk about our favorite pizzas all the time. When we go somewhere, we go on pizza tours. So there's a couple different ones that I love. Like, for sure, number one is my family's pizzeria. But we had some other really good ones. Like Philadelphia has a place called Pizzeria Badia, that's delicious. If you're looking here in Florida, Cristino's, which is in Clearwater, phenomenal pizza.
Okay.
I mean, I put it in the article, there's like pizzas everywhere. I mean, there's a place in Italy that I love in Lucca. It's the first pizzeria ever in Lucca.
Oh, wow.
I think that was my number 2 or my number 3. It's amazing pizza.
Okay. Okay.
But we're always like, every week we're like, where do we want to have pizza from this week? And we follow Dave Portnoy. So we look at like, the app, and we're like, okay, we're who has the best pizza review? And we'll like go around, if we're in Tampa or we're in the Northeast, and we'll go around and we'll find the pizza places and we'll eat.
That's funny. So are you a thin crust person, or are you more a Sicilian slice, deep dish? What's kind of your go-to?
So my favorite pizza of all pizzas is my family's. It's a rectangular pizza. It's sort of in the middle. It's not super thin, 15 slices, because you can get a corner, you can get a middle, or you can get an end. Now, other than that, I like a round, thin pizza.
A thin crust pizza?
Yeah,
Yeah. It makes the toppings just taste so much better without all that bread on there, right?
totally. Yeah, super good.
Awesome. Well, Eric, I want to thank you for your time. A Story About Pizza, you can get it on Amazon. And also, as I promised, we're doing a giveaway of this book. So here's how to enter. On the show notes, there's a link on the top of the show notes that says send me a text. If you're on your phone or if you're on your mobile device, tap on that link. It'll give you an option to send me a text. Send that with your contact information and your favorite pizza topping, and I will choose from there to see who will get a free copy of A Story About Pizza. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment on your favorite pizza topping, and I will go through there and pick one out. So yeah, hopefully I'll see a lot of text. I'll see a lot of comments, and we'll give that book away on my next episode. So make sure you're following along at Eat Your Content on your favorite podcast player of choice, because the next episode after this one, I will announce the winner and we will get that out to you. So Erica, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Eat Your Content. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting the podcast through my merch store on TeePublic. Get great quality items like t-shirts, hats, mugs, and more, all sporting the vibrant Eat Your Content logo. Go to teepublic.com/user/eatyourcontent for more great items, and thanks for your support.